Hey there, Goa fans. This is Mark DJ Solitaire here with episode 153 of Retro Goa Explorations, my weekly series in which I share in each episode one of my favorite tracks from the 1990s Goa Trance psychedelic dance movement. So we're covering right now tracks roughly from the autumn of 98 through to the summer of 99, give or take a little bit. And this one is a give or take a little bit because this is one that I know started being made in the summer of 99, but it came out later. And I know this because I was there at the beginning of its inception. And so there's a little backstory. So I've said before, I think, that Stefan from Total Eclipse was living in Tokyo, and he moved back. He moved to Tokyo to be with his then fiancée Miyuki, aka Miyuket, which is a French diminutive of the name Miyuki. And there's a track of that name by Total Eclipse, which Steph and Miyuki wrote. And so we used to spend a lot of time together while I was there teaching English. My Thursday morning class was at a station near where he lived. So I used to hop on a little bus after my morning class and we'd have coffee and hang out and listen to music and such. So we got to spend quite a lot of time. And we left Japan at the same time as well. And he moved back to Bordeaux. So we all met up at Solip's, and that's a whole other story, which I think I might have started talking about, but at some point, but we'll see. Um, and uh, and then after Solip's, we sort of did a couple little things, or different journeys, and then I went to meet them in Bordeaux, and I spent a little bit of time there. And I got to go to the Total Eclipse studio, which was on Serge's property. Uh, and we had talked for ages about writing a track, but he didn't have a studio in Tokyo. And this is before all the, everything on a laptop kind of music production. And so, we spent quite a bit of time just socializing around Bordeaux, and finally one day ended up at the studio. And it was a pretty amazing old studio. I mean, it was in this shed at the back of the house in this spacious garden at Serge's place. And I remember one of the things that was really cool was they had this incredible big mixer, and it remembered the presets for different tracks. And so, you'd push a button and these levels would shift automatically on this giant, like, I don't know, what, 32 channel mixer or something like that. And I had recorded some samples that I thought would be great in a track. And one of them was from Men in Black that said, I'm just a figment of your imagination. And so I brought the dad along, and I thought we were all going to sort of sit down and sort of do a little work and something. And Steph just kind of went to the controls and started, fiddling around with a bunch of stuff. And Loic and Serge weren't really being active in the studio, and I was just kind of there and didn't know what to do or what to touch. And finally, there was this one controller that Steph sort of said, "Oh, why don't you fiddle around on this?" And he'd set down a couple of notes, and I found this one really cool sound that creates like it's a very evocative kind of tremolo kind of oscillation between notes effect. And I thought that went better with the sound that he'd started. So he started just a couple of little sounds, but I didn't really give much input. And we weren't there for long before other social things were calling to us, and then we didn't end up going back. So he said they would continue working on the track. And then I wrote, this is again before we were doing a little bit of emailing. And then eventually I got a DAT in the mail with the name Imagination on it. And it's dated October 99. And this is something, so Steph and Loic finished it. So then I ended up quite surprised finding out that the Total Eclipse track was released on the Distance compilation, 10 Years of Trance. And under the title track, 10 Years of Trance, the bitotal eclipse for this project, for that compilation, was this track, Imagination. And so, of course, Imagination was the title for, based on the sample. And then I guess Steph was given the opportunity to present, quite a nice invitation to present a track to represent the year for 10 Years of Trance. And so they renamed the track 10 Years of Trance. And Distance wrote in their little write up that the track was written especially for the occasion, which is, I think, not entirely the case, but certainly was chosen for the occasion and it was renamed for the occasion. And so, yeah, so then that track ended up there, and I ended up, I wasn't credited as having done anything, didn't do much. I did choose that little voice and provided the sample. And I know that in some cases in previous years, I remember one artist telling me about this, that, there was somebody who simply provided a little bit of atmospheric support in the studio and they got credited. And this used to happen. So it was sometimes hit and miss like that. In any case, unfortunately, I didn't get to contribute more, didn't get to produce a full track with Total Eclipse, which, of course, back in '99, wouldn't that be a dream? But it was, at the studio, had a little input on this track and provided the sample. I wasn't expecting to have the flash of that memory wipe device of theirs sort of stay in the sample, but it did. And so it turned into one of those tracks, the Total Eclipse. They had more styles, I think, more really key signature flavors than I think anybody else. There's, of course, a lot of artists with a lot of variety, but they had the deep growling nighttime stuff. They had the very upbeat stuff. They had that mystical, kind of morning music. They had very quirky, weird, quixotic kind of stuff. So many flavors and brilliant at each of them. And this, my flavor, if I was going to choose, would be either like morning style or what I had in mind for this one was a little bit more driven. And it turned into a little bit of a slightly morning, but also a little bit more quixotic than it was planning, if I was going to be, actively part of the production, or in terms of, this is a track that I would want to create with these musicians. So, but it's Total Eclipse, and of course, it's brilliant. So, and I really do love that little voice. I mean, I had no idea how all this equipment worked, and I was just, going through all these different settings on some kind of effects machine, and this, I think, turned out beautifully. And then we have all these classic, unbelievable Total Eclipse sounds and that brilliant engineering, right? So, just a really fun track and one that I thought, maybe it's time to feature. It started in the season that we're talking about, but came public later on. I had to go downstairs and get my little some of my DAT collection. Now, at this point, some of it was kept in. I had my sort of like spy business briefcase over here that I used to take to gigs. Sort of wanted to have like a little, handcuff on it so nobody can steal my precious music. And so I would have, sort of a bunch of tapes like that. And at some period, sort of while I was living in London, I started just, working chronologically. So that's my second debt from November 97 and putting, I would type everything and have it all printed clearly. So apparently my eyes worked well enough at that point that I was able to read that. And then I started, choosing, you know, different themes for my dad. So this one, Morning Glory. So it's like good morning tracks. Should probably get some of these lined up for the next time I'm playing a morning mix. And yeah, so anyway, this was being kept in storage with that one. Of course, we've got other formats for keeping our music now. We have a whole generation of people who never had a physical form for music. They never had CDs, never had DATs, never had vinyl, just files. There's advantages to that, but I miss the texture, the tactile sort of experience. This track also ended up on my good friend Domino's mix CD. Bunch of killer tracks on here as well. So I think that was around 2000, 2001. Don't have my glasses on right now, so I can't actually read. Certainly couldn't read those stats anymore either. Okay, so on that, with all of that aside stuff, let's give a listen to this track, which started out under the name Imagination and became released as 10 Years of Trance by Total Eclipse. So this is that, really weird, otherworldly kind of sound with an interesting rhythm. And then interesting rhythm again with those hi-hats. And then interesting, blend of moods again, which is very Total Eclipse, right? So this is a little bit more cheery and upbeat, while there's this other kind of weird stuff. And then this incredible kick. Just wow. And then next round. Okay, more rhythmic high stuff, and then another little rhythmic stuff in the background. Quite a lot of rhythmic elements right now. And that's the little voice that I chose, which I think has this really sort of otherworldly, bird-like quality to it. And then we get another quirky, again, that quixotic, funky, evocative Total Eclipse sound. And the way those two play together so well. And then this. All of these different elements, and like in the first minute or so of this track. Right, so again, these they're just like parts of a complete sort of melody, so to speak, these little stems that take you in different directions. And notice all the different rhythmic elements, and they all just play together so well. And then here, this low voice. And then psychedelic popcorn, I don't know what that is, just wild stuff. And then, nope, not yet. There's going to be some crunchy stuff coming on the next break. That's that gnarly Total Eclipse kind of sound. One of them. Very cool, creative kind of break. So again, very just atmospheric at this point, right? So no melodic content per se, just, the shaping simulates melody. Some zappy quality, and then love the rhythm there. Here comes the sample.
Really? Really? I am just a figment of your imagination.
Again, that real strong rhythmic emphasis. Notice the note change. So many different elements happening simultaneously. There's something that reminds me of I Love Everywhere in there. This kind of slightly semi-anguished, ecstatic cry. And then that beautiful gating. There's a little bit of the trilling happening at the same time. It's a whole lot happening. Now it's gotten drier a little bit, the texture. And now that initial quirky sound is creeping in again. So we got some stuff to pull out there. I love that sort of growly element to this voice here. A little granular. Again, the multiple rhythmic stuff going on at the same time. It's just absolutely brilliant. And I love those whooshes. Now it's going to start unwinding as that initial introductory sound comes back. And then that voice comes back. So it's like, you get everything from the introduction sort of replayed at the outro. A really good opportunity to mix into something else that's melodic. Wow. Hadn't heard that in a little while. And it's another one, going through this series, I'm just sort of like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. Of course, I mean, never really entirely forgot about this one, but hasn't been in the playlist in a little while. It was nice to revisit that and this amazing memory of, being in Bordeaux and just, having that one quick little visit to the iconic Total Eclipse studio. Now, this was just before Serge and Loïc and Steph ended up, basically creating the two projects where the Antidote, which had been an alternate name that Total Eclipse was using when they released on labels other than Blue Room, right? Once they signed their Blue Room contract, you'll see there was Total Eclipse on Dragonfly and on Tip. And then, from Phosphorescent, you see, them showing up as at the Antidote. That was all three of them. But then Serge kept the name Antidote for what would become his solo project, and Steph and Loïc continued as Total Eclipse. And that started happening around this time. I don't think I had anything to do with it. It was just kind of something that was in the, in the making, I think probably for a while. And so this was, on the Distant CD, all three musicians were credited, but when it was released, on Domino's with a little bit more attention, and I think it might have come out on Tip World, if I recall, but I'm not 100% sure. It is just officially, and Steph told me, it was Loïc and Steph that, put the whole track together. So there we go. All right, so I will sign off here and leave you with the whole track without commentary so you can listen again to all of those unbelievable flavors that are just so characteristic of the full range and spectrum of Total Eclipse creations. I'm Mark DJ Solitaire, wrapping up episode 153 of Retro Goa Explorations and leaving you now with Total Eclipse's originally called Imagination track, which is now referred to as 10 Years of Trance.
just a figment of your imagination.